You're at your 30th work anniversary, and instead of a gold watch, you throw a celebration so huge that it bankrupts the entire company. And then the employees start a riot. Sounds like a corporate disaster, right? Now, replace the company with a whole country, and you've got the story I'm about to tell you. Oh, and throw in some sorcerers, voodoo, Cold War politics, and a prophecy that just refuses to mind its business. Welcome to the wild, absurd, and painfully real world of African politics in the late 20th century. Our tale begins in République du Golfe, a fictional West African country that feels all too real. After independence, this young nation elects its first president, Fracassa Santos. A man so paranoid about losing power that he sleeps behind walls thicker than the egos of every politician combined. Why? Because his voodoo priest told him that someone from the naked people of the mountain would overthrow him. And if you know anything about prophecies and stories, you know this is basically a spoiler alert. But before we dive into that chaos, let's talk about the man who would change everything, Koyaga. Now, Koyaga wasn't your average guy. He was the son of Chao, legendary warrior, first man to fight for the French, first to wear clothes, and first to lead his people against French invaders. His mother, Najuma, a woman so strong that even Chao himself, the great warrior, met his match. So yes, Koyaga came from stock that doesn't play.
Get out.
Koyaga starts out as a pro-French soldier. You know, the guy who sides with the colonizers because that's where the paycheck comes from. But after independence, he and his men want what's due to them, their pensions. Seems fair, right? Except President Fracassa says, nope. Not only does he refuse to pay, but he also refuses to integrate them into the army. Why? Because of that pesky prophecy. According to Fracassa's sorcerers, one of these guys from the mountains is destined to dethrone him. And guess what? That's the quickest way to make a prophecy come true. Now, Koyaga doesn't even know about the prophecy. He just wants his money. But when the government says no, he decides, fine, I'll take it by force. Except, plot twist, what started as a simple mission for pensions turns into a full-blown coup. And just like that, Koyaga takes over. But he's not alone. There are 4 big players in this political chess game: Koyaga, J.L. Crunet, Lejo, also known as Bajo, and Tima. First up, Lejo. Oh, this guy is something else. He was supposed to become a priest, but on the eve of his investiture, someone almost kills him for allegedly sleeping with their wife. So he runs into exile and joins the French military, fighting in Madagascar, Morocco, Vietnam, and Algeria. Everywhere he went, he made a name for himself as a ruthless soldier. And listen to this quote.
Everywhere, he proved himself a formidable leader and a pitiless foe of colonized people struggling to be free. During his travels, he acquired the prestigious rank of Warrant Officer Second Class and the conviction that, in life, only treachery and deception triumph and that they always pay.
This guy literally built his life philosophy on betrayal. If Machiavelli had a fan club, Lejo would be president. Then we have Tima, the intellectual revolutionary, a communist, an anti-colonialist, and someone who studied under a wealthy French patron with, let's just say, an interesting fondness for young African men. Tima becomes the president of the National Assembly. So you can imagine the Cold War alarm bells going off in Washington and Paris. Next is J.L. Crunet, the mulatto politician torn between two worlds. As Kourouma puts it,
unhappy not to be white, but happy not to be black.
That's a burn and a half. He becomes head of government. And finally, Koyaga, the soldier turned minister of defense, the man at the center of it all.
You're goddamn right.
Now you might think, wow, these 4 are going to work together and rebuild the nation. Ha, no, remember what Kourouma says in another book?
If you pull off a big robbery with someone, you will never truly enjoy the spoils until the other person is dead.
That's politics in one sentence. Soon enough, coups and counter-coups start flying like confetti at a wedding. Eventually, Koyaga comes out on top. He becomes president, and then begins the real circus.
So it begins.
Koyaga doesn't just want to rule. He wants to master the art of ruling. So he goes on a grand tour of Africa to learn from the best dictators in the business. And this is where Kourouma really flexes his satirical muscles. Through Koyaga's visits, we meet leaders clearly modeled on real African strongmen. Mobutu Sese Seko, Houphouët-Boigny, Bokassa. These guys don't just rule, they invent new ways to cling to power. One calls himself father of the nation. Another becomes an emperor with a throne shaped like an eagle made of solid gold. I'm not kidding. The coronation cost more than the country's entire annual budget. The French even flew in troops to secure the ceremony and lent aircraft for the party. Talk about priorities.
I'm the lion.
And of course, all these leaders have one magic phrase to keep Western aid flowing: I'm anti-communist. As Kourouma writes,
Democracies will only help people who are anti-communist, even if the Cold War, the struggle between communists and the West, is just a friendly scuffle between white men, between the rich. We have to get involved. We Africans get involved so we can reap the fruits of victory.
Translation: the West didn't care if you were Satan himself. As long as you hated communism, you were their guy.
You're talking to my guy all wrong.
So fast forward to Koyaga's 30th anniversary in power. He throws a celebration so massive that honestly it drains the country's treasury dry. People start to protest, riots erupt, and when Koyaga tries his old trick, yelling, "Help, communists!" he's told, "Sorry, buddy, communism's dead. The Cold War is over, and so is his free pass." Now, if he wants Western aid, he actually has to reform. He has to allow political parties and hold elections. And so, in the ultimate irony, Koyaga, the man who came to power through coups, blood, and voodoo, reinvents himself as a Democrat. And believe it or not, he wins the election in spectacular fashion. Because of course he does.
Amazing, show-stopping, spectacular.
And that, my friends, is the wild, tragic, and darkly hilarious journey inside Waiting for the Wild Beast to Vote by Ahmadou Kourouma. This book is, wow, it's biting, it's brutal, it's long. Seriously, Kourouma could have cut half the side stories and it would still hit hard. But at its core, it's not just a novel, it's a political autopsy of post-independence Africa. The satire is razor sharp, but the reality behind it, even sharper. Every coup, every leader, every act of betrayal in this book echoes something real. One of the most fascinating things is how Kourouma weaves African oral tradition into the narrative. The story is told by Bingo, a griot, with interruptions from Tikura, Koyaga himself, and his aide Mcledio. It's messy, layered, and very much like listening to a long griot performance, full of exaggerations, interruptions, and commentary. At times, it feels like Kourouma is writing the entire history of Africa disguised as a novel. And in some places, he's definitely intruding with his own opinions. But hey, it works. Themes include the nature of power, how the lust for power corrupts everyone, nationalists, colonial stooges, intellectuals. The Cold War's shadow, how East versus West turned Africa into a chessboard where dictators were pawns propped up by foreign powers. Complicity, not just Western meddling, but African complicity in dictatorship. Satire as truth. It's funny, but it hurts because it's true. Ahmadou Kourouma was born in Côte d'Ivoire in 1927 and is widely regarded as one of Africa's greatest novelists. His works, like Allah is Not Obliged and The Sons of Independence, explore themes of colonialism, power, and the failures of leadership. What makes him unique is how he blends French with African oral storytelling traditions, creating a voice that is sharp, ironic, and deeply rooted in African culture. Sadly, Kourouma passed away in 2003, but his works remain some of the most fearless critiques of African politics. If you're looking for a book that reads like political satire but hits like a history lesson, and if you can handle a heavy dose of cynicism, this one's for you. But if you want something similar with even more bite, check out Ngugi wa Thiong'o's Wizard of the Crow. Trust me, you won't regret it. Until next time, keep reading and stay critical. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you're interested in diving deeper into this book, I've left some links down in the description. You can use it to grab yourself a copy and keep the adventure going. And if you're in the mood for more great reads, don't go just yet. Click on one of the videos popping up right now that I think you'll love. And don't forget to give this review a like, leave a comment, or even subscribe if you'd like to see more. Every bit of support helps us grow this little community of book lovers. See you in the next one.